I first saw them when I was 11. The eyes in the river. They weren't attached to anything. No face, no body, just two wide, unblinking eyes drifting along the current, staring straight at me. I remember thinking that maybe it was a trick of the light, maybe just some floating debris. But then they turned. They followed me, and I ran. I never spoke about it. Not to my parents, not to my friends. Because when you're a kid and you tell people you saw floating eyes in the river, they don't listen. They just tell you, you're imagining things, sweetie. So I try to forget, but you don't forget things like that. You just pretend they never happened until they happen again. I grew up in a small town, one of those places where everyone knew everyone, where the only exciting thing was the local legend about the girl who drowned in the river. They said it happened years before I was born. A little girl named Hannah Walker had gone missing. They searched for weeks, dragged the entire river. They never found her body, only her shoes, floating near the exact same spot where I saw the eyes. But it was just a story, right? A ghost tale parents use to scare their kids. I never thought much of it, until the night I heard my name whispered from the water. I was 17. The night was heavy, thick with fog and silence. I was walking home from my friend's house, cutting through the riverbank like I always did. I don't know why I stopped. Something just felt wrong. The river was too still, too quiet. And then, from the darkness, a whisper, a girl's voice. Ethan. My blood ran cold. I turned, heart pounding. No one was there. Only the river. Only the current, shifting in the moonlight. Then, something floated to the surface. A pair of eyes. They blinked, and then they sank. I ran. I ran so hard my lungs burned. My legs ached. My throat was raw from gasping for air. By the time I made it home, I had only one thought in my mind. I should have never come back to this town. I tried to pretend it didn't happen. I told myself it was just exhaustion, or maybe the reflection of the moon, or a trick of the water. But then the old man found me. He was sitting by the docks, just staring at the river, a cigarette hanging from his lips. "You saw them, didn't you?" he said. I froze. Saw what? He took a long drag of his cigarette. "The eyes," he murmured. "They're always watching." A chill crawled up my spine. I forced out a laugh. "You're messing with me." He didn't smile. "They remember," he said. "They remember everyone who's ever looked into the water." I swallowed hard. "Ooh, who are you?" He flicked the cigarette into the river. "I used to fish here when I was a kid," he said. "Then one day I saw something I wasn't supposed to." He turned to me, and that's when I noticed his eyes were cloudy, pale, like he was going blind, or like something had taken the color from them. "They never let go," he whispered. I walked away. I didn't look back. But that night, I dreamed of the river, and in my dream, something crawled out of it. It didn't stop after that. Every time I walked near the river, I felt them, watching, staring, waiting. Sometimes I'd see them in the corner of my eye, drifting along the current. Sometimes I'd hear the whispers, and sometimes I'd see something else. A figure, a girl, standing in the water, half submerged. Her skin was gray. Her mouth didn't move, but her eyes were missing. And I swear, I could feel her trying to find them. A week later, the river flooded. Heavy rain, rising water. The current was wild violet. But something was wrong. I was at home when I heard the scream. I ran to my window, heart hammering. There was a girl standing outside. She was drenched, clothes clinging to her skin, her hair dripping wet. And then she collapsed. I ran downstairs, threw open the door, but she was gone. Only wet footprints remained, leading back toward the river. I followed them. The rain pounded against my skin, the wind howling in my ears, but when I reached the riverbank, I froze. Because in the water, there was a girl. She floated face up, motionless, eyes wide, blank. I stepped forward, and suddenly the old man was beside me. His hand clamped onto my shoulder. His fingers dug in, shaking. "Don't," he whispered. I turned to him. He looked terrified. "What?" I asked. His grip tightened. "Because she's not real." I looked back at the water, and she was gone. Only the river remained. Only the rain and the wind and the whisper of something just beneath the surface. Something that had been watching me all along. The river wasn't done with me. That night, after seeing the drowned girl and hearing the old man's warning, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, pale, bloated, eyes wide open. But the worst part? It wasn't just in my dreams. Because when I got up the next morning and looked out my window, there were wet footprints on my porch. And they stopped right at my door. I didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was the rain from last night. Maybe I was just seeing things. But deep down, I knew the truth. The river was watching me. And now it was getting closer. I skipped school that day. Couldn't focus. My stomach felt twisted. My head ached from lack of sleep. Instead, I sat in my room, staring at the door, waiting, listening. Then, sometime after noon, I heard it, a creak, from inside the house. I shot up, heart pounding. Another creak. Then wet footsteps, slow, deliberate, coming toward my room. I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking, and pressed myself against the wall. The air felt thick, heavy, like something was breathing it in, sucking all the warmth out of the space. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I held my breath. Silence. Then a whisper. Soft. Feminine. Right on the other side of the wood. "Ethan." I didn't move. Didn't breathe. And then, bang. The door slammed open. I screamed. But the hallway was empty. Only the floor remained, soaked, as if someone had been standing there, dripping water onto the wood. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a nightmare. It wasn't a ghost story. It was real. And whatever was happening, it wanted me to see it. I couldn't stay in that house. I grabbed my keys and drove straight to the river, where I knew I'd find him. The old man. He was exactly where I left him, sitting by the docks, staring at the water like he was waiting for it to speak. He didn't even look at me when I sat down next to him. "I saw her," I whispered. His face didn't change. "Of course you did," he muttered. I swallowed hard. "Ooh, what is she?" He took a long drag of his cigarette, exhaling smoke like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. "You ever hear the real story of Hannah Walker?" he asked. I nodded. "The girl who drowned." He let out a bitter chuckle. "She didn't drown." A chill ran down my spine. They never found her body because it never left the river. He finally turned to face me, and in his cloudy, lifeless eyes, I saw something that made my stomach twist, fear. "The river keeps her," he whispered. "And now, she wants company." That evening, I did something stupid. I went back to the river. Alone. The old man's words rattled in my skull, but I needed to see for myself. I stood at the edge, staring into the black water. The air was thick, humid, the scent of wet earth clinging to my skin. I waited. Minutes passed. Then, a ripple. My pulse spiked. A second ripple. The water shifted, just slightly, like something was moving beneath the surface. And then a face emerged. Hannah. Pale skin, stringy hair clinging to her skull. her mouth slightly open as if she was trying to speak. But her eyes, they were gone. Just empty sockets filled with river water. I stepped back, but she moved with me. I turned to run, and something grabbed my ankle. Cold, slimy. I screamed, kicking, thrashing, but it pulled me down. The river opened around me, swallowing me whole. And beneath the surface, I saw them. The eyes. Hundreds. Floating. Watching. They weren't debris. They weren't tricks of the light. They were real. And then I heard her whisper, "Stay." Darkness swallowed me whole, and everything went black. Darkness. Cold, suffocating darkness swallowed me whole. The river wrapped around me like a living thing, thick, icy tendrils pulling me down deeper and deeper. I tried to kick to claw my way back up, but something held me. And then I saw them. The eyes. Hundreds, maybe thousands, suspended in the current, staring at me from the void. Some were wide and terrified, frozen in eternal fear. Others were dull and glassy, rolling aimlessly with the shifting waters. They weren't attached to anything, just floating, watching. I screamed, bubbles exploding from my mouth, rising to the unreachable surface. The water pressed against my chest, squeezing my ribs until my lungs burned, my vision blurred. I was going to die. The pressure was unbearable. The weight of the entire river crushed me like a burial shroud. And then a whisper, "You see them now." My heart stopped. The voice was right next to my ear. I twisted, trying to find the source, but there was nothing. Just the eyes, drifting, watching. Then, suddenly, a hand burst from the darkness and clamped around my wrist. I had no time to react. Before I could even struggle, I was yanked upward with impossible force, my body ripping through the water like a puppet on strings. And then I broke the surface, gasped for air, choking, shaking. I flailed in the water, kicking desperately, and when I looked up, I saw him, the old man, standing knee-deep in the river, arms outstretched. He had saved me. I scrambled toward him, coughing up river water, my entire body shaking violently as I collapsed onto the muddy shore. He didn't say a word, just stood there, watching me, like he knew exactly what I had just seen, like he knew it was only going to get worse. The old man led me back to his tiny shack near the docks, where he handed me a dry blanket and a flask of something that burned my throat. I didn't speak for a long time. My brain was still struggling to process what had happened. Eventually, he broke the silence. "You see them now, don't you?" I swallowed hard, nodded. He sighed, rubbing his temple. "You shouldn't have looked." My voice came out hoarse. "What are they?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "The ones the river keeps." A chill crawled up my spine. "They don't go to the other side. They don't rot, don't fade away." He took a slow drag of his cigarette, eyes distant. "They're just trapped." A lump formed in my throat. "Why?" His gaze flickered to me, something almost pitying in his expression. "Because they were taken before their time." His words hung heavy in the air. "The ones the river keeps." My stomach twisted. Hannah Walker, the girl who drowned. Except she didn't drown. That's what he told me before, which meant I swallowed, forcing the words out. "Did something take her?" The old man's face darkened. His knuckles tightened around his cigarette, his hands shaking just slightly. "There are things in that river, boy." His voice was barely above a whisper. "Things older than this town, older than any of us." I leaned forward. "What things?" His eyes met mine. things that pull you under. And in that moment, I knew Hannah Walker never drowned. She was taken. And if I wasn't careful, I would be next. I barely made it home that night. My hands were still shaking. My lungs still ached from the river's grip. I locked the door behind me, turned on every light in the house, and wrapped myself in blankets, trying to convince myself I was safe, that it was over. But then the whispers started, soft, wet, like a voice carried through the current. I bolted upright, heart hammering. The sound was coming from inside the house. I turned my head slowly, and that's when I saw it. The water, pooling on the floor, dripping from the ceiling, seeping from the walls. A horrible, suffocating pressure filled the room, like I was sinking, like the whole house was being dragged underwater. And then my phone buzzed. I flinched, snapping my gaze to the screen. A text message. No number. No name. Just 2 words. Come back. My blood turned to ice. I threw my phone across the room, heart slamming against my ribs. And that's when I noticed it. The mirror. The one across the room. Because in the reflection, there was someone standing behind me. Drenched. Dripping. Head tilted slightly. And even though I couldn't see her face, I knew. It was Hannah, the girl from the river. The one who never left. And she wasn't alone. Because in the mirror, there were more. Figures. Dozens of them. Standing in the shadows of my room. Watching. Waiting. And as I turned, too terrified to even breathe, the light flickered out, leaving me in total darkness. And then, right next to my ear, a whisper. You're already ours. The darkness was suffocating. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The whisper still lingered in my ear, dripping with something that felt wet, cold, like the river had followed me home. You're already ours. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I just stared into the mirror, heart hammering so violently it hurt, because the reflection was wrong. The room behind me was filled with them. Figures. Some were blurry, flickering like candle flames. Others were perfectly clear, dripping wet, faces pale and bloated, their eyes wide and lifeless. Hannah was the closest. She stood directly behind me, not breathing, not blinking, just watching. Something inside me snapped. I turned and they were gone. Just my empty bedroom. But the floor was still wet, and I could still feel them. I didn't sleep. I didn't dare. By the time the first gray light of dawn seeped through my curtains, I was already throwing clothes into a bag. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know where I was going. All I knew was I had to get away. The old man's words echoed in my head. There are things in that river, things that pull you under. I wasn't going to wait to find out what they wanted. But just as I grabbed my keys, the knocking started. Slow, deliberate, at the front door. A cold, twisting dread coiled in my stomach. I didn't move. The knocking came again, louder this time. Bang, bang, bang. Something was wrong. I reached for my phone with shaking hands, ready to dial 911 when I heard it. A voice. You can't run. My entire body went rigid. Because the voice, it was mine. I didn't open the door. I didn't move until the knocking finally stopped. Until everything went so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. And then I ran. I drove for hours. Out of town, past the forests and highways, further than I had ever been before. But no matter how far I went, I could still smell the water. It clung to my skin, soaked into my clothes. Thick, rotten, like the river had seeped into me. I checked into the first motel I could find. The room was damp, the air stale, but I didn't care. I just needed to sleep, just for a little while. But that night I dreamed of the river, of the hands that reached from the depths, of eyes that never closed, and of Hannah, standing in the water, smiling, like she knew something I didn't, like she was waiting for me. The next morning, my phone buzzed. A new message. No number. No name. Just 3 words. You should go. My throat tightened because the time on the message, 3:12 a.m. I had been asleep, and then I saw it. The window. The condensation on the glass. Something had been standing outside, watching me, and it had left behind wet footprints, leading straight to my bed. I didn't touch the footprints. I didn't dare. I just sat there, staring at them, my body frozen in a deep, suffocating stillness. The air in the motel room felt thick, like the walls had soaked in something old, something rotting. The smell of the river was stronger than ever, but I wasn't near the water. I was miles away. So why did I feel like I was still drowning? Then my phone buzzed again. Another message. No number. No name. Just 2 words. Too late. My stomach twisted. Because this time I wasn't alone. It started with the sound of dripping. Somewhere behind me. Slow, steady like water leaking from a body. I turned my head and the lights went out. The darkness swallowed me whole. I grabbed my phone, fingers shaking as I turned on the flashlight. The moment the screen lit up, a hand shot out from under the bed, soaking wet, gray, bloated fingers, gripping my ankle so tightly I felt the cold sink into my bones. I screamed, kicked, but the grip only tightened. I yanked myself free, scrambling across the damp carpet, and that's when I saw them. In the dim glow of my flashlight, the eyes, floating in the air. No faces, no bodies, just dozens of staring, unblinking eyes. And they were all looking at me. I bolted for the door, fumbling with the lock, my hands slick with sweat. The doorknob wouldn't turn. I pounded against it, desperate, sobbing. Let me go, let me go. Then from behind me, you never left. My breath caught, because I knew that voice. Slowly, I turned, and Hannah was standing in the center of the room, soaking wet, smiling, like she had never drowned at all, like she had been waiting for me. Her lips parted, river water spilling from her mouth. You were always meant to stay. The walls of the room rippled. The floor turned black, glossy, like the motel itself was melting into water. And I was sinking. The river had found me. No matter how far I ran, no matter how much I tried to escape, it had been inside me all along. Something grabbed my wrists. Something cold. I fought, screamed, clawed at the ground, but I was being pulled under. The motel ceiling blurred above me, twisting into a reflection, like I was looking up at the surface from below. The last thing I saw was Hannah standing over me, still smiling, still watching. Then I was gone. The room was empty the next morning. No sign of me, no sign of a struggle. The only thing left was the bed, still damp, and the bathroom mirror, cracked, with a single message written in the condensation. The river never lets go.